Sign or decline with Landry Locker from the locker room here on YouTube. Cody Stoots with you as well. And Landry, an unexpected player here in sign or decline. Felt for a while he was going to get the franchise tag. Now it seems like he's hitting the open market. What do we make of the big defensive tackle from Miami, Christian Wilkins?
Definitely one of the most appealing names on the market. Miami's getting to the point where they're going to have to start making tough decisions, and they're going to have to start losing good players. We're already seeing it with some of the stuff they're doing. They got some other guys that they're going to have to lock up in the future. That's the situation the Texans, in a perfect world, you find yourself in a couple of years. Hopefully you maximize your opportunity, but now Miami's to the point where they're going to have to let good players go. And Christian Wilkins is a good player. Definitely the best, most decorated interior defensive lineman on the market. I don't hear very many people say too many bad things about him. I know he was a captain at Miami. I know he's been available. He's been durable. He's coming off a year in which his sack total jumped up to 9 from 3.5, 4.5, 1.5, 2. The previous years. The good things, the case for Christian Wilkins is pretty clear, and we didn't even really anticipate that he was going to get out there. But that's really the best case for Christian Wilkins. Is he seems to be everything that anyone would want on their football team if we're just putting money to the side, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second.
Yeah, he's going to be one of the best names to hit free agency, because even though the Chiefs use their franchise tag on L'Jarius Sneed, it doesn't seem like Chris Jones is leaving Kansas City. And then there was basically the threat from the Ravens last week that if Justin Madubuike does not get a long-term contract, he's getting the franchise tag. So Wilkins ends up as that interior defensive lineman that is going to be the top of the market, going to be the big name that hits it and is actually willing to leave his team.
Because my wonder is what happens with Chris Jones. Does Chris Jones hit this market?
Well, okay, that's an interesting conversation.
That's where I want to take it, and that would lead me to my case against is if you're looking at Christian Wilkins and you're looking at a guy who's 28.
Well, hang on right there, because I got some case for Christian Wilkins stuff.
Okay, we
can make the case against him here in just a second. But I got some case for Christian Wilkins. You talked about the sack number jumping up. That's important. He's had the tackles for a loss before, but he had 11.5 sacks in his first few seasons. He had 9 sacks in just this one past season. So the sack number is there, and he's doing that with a rotating cast of defensive ends that are up, down, hurt. Sometimes they're playing, sometimes they're not. And he's really not doing that with a great interior.
Really a hurt whole defense.
Yeah, the whole defense is banged up there in Miami. So I do feel like, okay, yes, he's going to be expensive, but you put him on the Texans, D'Amico Ryans' defense, Will Anderson coming off the edge, perhaps a different edge player, maybe a draft pick or another free agent, kind of pushing things to him. Those sack numbers could stay steady. In addition to, look, I know the tackles for a loss at 10 when he has 9 sacks, that's not super impressive. But I was going through a bunch of box scores looking at, okay, he didn't have a lot of tackles for a loss. How many tackles did he have for 1-yard gain, 2-yard gain, 3-yard gain? The dude was all over the place. So I know that it's not tackles for a loss, but if you can stop guys for a 1-2-yard gain, man, that's really impressive. And for 2 seasons straight, you mentioned it, he's played a ton of football. 2 years ago, third most defensive line snaps. This past year, 10th most defensive line snaps. The dude is durable. And one final thing, not that it matters for the football, he's entertaining as hell. If you've ever watched him get mic'd up, he is super entertaining. He would be a very fun personality to pay attention to on this Texans team. Now that I've said all the nice things about him, let's talk about all the bad things about him.
My thing is this with Christian Wilkins. I just kind of think this is what a bad free agent deal looks like. And I'm being biased. I'm looking over history. This isn't like some sort of trend or something, but I look at some of the worst free agent contracts that we speak about. It always seems to be that interior D lineman getting his first massive payday. You can go back to Sean Gilbert. You can go to Albert Haynesworth. You can go to Javon Curse with the Philadelphia Eagles. We can talk about Trey Flowers. We can talk about Ndamukong Suh. He only lasted 3 years in Miami. It just seems like these big, massive super deals for defensive linemen. And the other thing is he's 28. And I know I'm not trying to sit here and act like that's a really old thing. He's a year and a half younger than Chris Jones. So if you're talking about Chris Jones hitting the market and you're talking about Christian Wilkins, for me, maybe I'm just basing this on history. Maybe there's no connection to it, but this just feels like a really good player. But I've never heard, let me put it this way. I've never heard a fan base, and maybe I'm not digging enough, whenever like there's a signing made, like the ones I previously mentioned, that's upset by it. So I don't think there's going to be like any outrage, but more times than not, they don't make it to the end of the contract. And this just has the feel, this just has the layout of what a bad free agency contract looks like. Not saying that's what's going to happen, but it does kind of have that feel.
You mentioned the age factor. And again, it's not the worst thing in the world because defensive tackles, they age pretty decently. Sheldon Rankins just played at the age of 29 this past season in his 8th year in the NFL. Christian Wilkins is going
with a lot of injuries too.
Right. Christian Wilkins is going to play at the age of 29 in his 6th year. So like that's a little bit of a positive, a little bit of negative. Like when it goes for these defensive tackles. It feels like those guys don't stick around in the level of good that you would hope that some other players and some other positions kind of hang around a little bit. When it goes, it goes. I do worry about the financial commitment. If he's the top defensive tackle on the market, assuming Chris Jones goes back to Kansas City, the money blows up. A Spot Rack's, projecting $20 million. I mean, it could get to 22, 24, 26. And I just don't know that you couldn't convince me that paying Sheldon Rankins, $10 million again this year, drafting a defensive tackle, paying an edge wouldn't be a better use of the money than just paying Christian Wilkins.
Well, I'll go a step further. If Chris Jones hits the market, you don't even really have to convince me much that paying the extra for Chris Jones would be more appealing. That's a 3-year commitment. That's laid out. I think Christian Wilkins is more than a 3-year commitment. And he's not as good as Chris Jones. Like we can say all these good things about him. He's not as good as Chris Jones. Essentially, you're taking one of the best players in the league, regardless of what the age is, and you're taking him away from a team that just won the Super Bowl, and they wouldn't have won that Super Bowl without him last year. Now, they can transform, and they can still be a Super Bowl squad, but they don't win that Super Bowl without him. So you're adding one of the best players in the league to your team. You're matching up the years because 3 years is pretty much set in stone. No one's given him 3 years. Aaron Donald got 3 years. I think that has kind of been established that Chris Jones is going to get 3. If it's more than 3, then no. But you're giving him 3 years. You're lining that up with the Tank Dell, CJ Stroud, and Will Anderson contract, and you're paying a little bit more than what you would pay Christian Wilkins, and you're getting one of the best players in the game. For me, that is more appealing than paying Christian Wilkins like he's one of the best defensive linemen in the league, because it doesn't feel like as much of an impact move with Chris Jones. So I'm not even talking about using smart money. I'm talking about making an even bigger splash.
Yeah.
And if Chris Jones, if Chris Jones hits the market, break bread.
It's a big conversation. I mean, Chris Jones, you sign him, it doesn't work out. It was a swing worth taking. Christian Wilkins, you sign him, it doesn't work out. There's a lot of I told you so's associated with that. One executive, the rumor going around about Chris Jones at the Combine last week when I was in Indianapolis was that he wouldn't make what he makes if he hits the open market because teams would see that he, quote, takes plays off. And when somebody relayed that to me, I go, yeah, well, he plays 20 games a year, unlike everybody else who plays 17 or 16. So if he wants to take a couple plays off in week 13 because he's out there mauling people in the Super Bowl, I think everybody would be okay with a couple of plays off.
Okay, that's cool.
Like, turn it on. All right, so this turned into a Chris Jones love fest, but this is about Christian Wilkins. The verdict on Christian Wilkins, I kind of sense where you're going with this one. The people should sense where we're both going with this one. It's a big thumbs down for me on Christian Wilkins.
Yeah, it's a thumbs down. Good player. Look, if they like him, it'll be interesting to see how he fits. You're getting a really good player. It just doesn't seem like you're getting the cream of the crop. And when these guys hit the market, you're paying them like they're the cream of the crop. We've seen it very often with D linemen, really with guys of all positions. So if they're going to swing for the fences and get a big guy, I would like for it to be Chris Jones, assuming he hits the market. So this is a no for me, sir. I am out on Christian Wilkins, and I would be a little bit skeptical if they made this move.
I would wonder what the process in the decision-making was that led them to something like this. It would be very curious for the Texans to do something like this with Christian Wilkins. That's sign or decline, a big decline here on Christian Wilkins. Plenty more as free agency is right around the corner. You don't want to miss any of it. You got to subscribe to Landry's channel, The Locker Room, here on YouTube. You've got to listen to him on Sports Radio 610 each and every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Sports Radio 610. Of course, the Odyssey app. And, of course, you can catch me here on YouTube as well and subscribe to Houston Football, where I do all my writing about the Houston Texans. You don't want to miss any of it. It's free agency right around the corner and plenty more videos coming your way.